Well, Rob, welcome back, man.
We're here. We're here, back from vacation. Round two of recording this one.
Yeah, you've been on the move. You did since we last recorded together. You went to a conference in the North Pole, and we had Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything notable either from the turkey or from internet rubbing elbows with a bunch of other founders?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to go up to Helsinki, and there were like a couple of interesting parts of it. What I will say is that they really need to work on having enough food for a growing American boy.
A growing 35-year-old American boy.
33, thank you very much.
Oh,
But
okay.
but I mean, I was just like starving the entire time, and they're like, "Oh, here's one. Uh, I'll give you one little smoked salmon, one little piece, and then you can take a breath of cold winter air, and that should
Yeah.
be enough." It's like, no,
Feast.
I need a hamburger.
Yeah. Feast on the sessions and on saunas. Apparently saunas were a big positive experience.
Yeah, some of it was great, but yeah, no, that it was all great. It was really cool. I got someone recognized me on the street, which is never going to happen again,
Yeah.
and
Was that because of your criminal record or because of
like, sir,
bull? Yeah.
you are too close to our citizens here.
How did you get through
It was,
immigration?
yeah, it was actually the police. Yeah.
You're like, oh, they know who I am. This is great.
Yeah, no autographs, please. And they're like, sir, please get in the car. But yeah, no, it was good. And then like two families invited me into their houses, which was really neat. And so I got to experience a little slice of life.
Cool.
So it was nice.
That's
So
that's awesome. Shout
yeah,
out to the families that welcomed Rob, gave out
yeah.
a little local flavor. Well, hey, I'm excited to talk today. It's a very practical post. It's called Pull is Everywhere. FAQ number one about pull. And so this, I think the plan here, Rob, remind or correct me if I'm wrong, is to actually walk through some common misconceptions, questions that you are frequently getting, and like just hit those head on. What else would you add on the context for this?
Yeah, no, so basically, because I mostly work with B2B software and AI startups that sell to certain like contract value ranges, it's very reasonable for people to be like, well, I sell enterprise, or well, I'm building a consumer product. Does pull apply here? Or I'm in deep tech, right? And so I always get questions from people about these kind of like, okay, is this framework and approach just relevant here? And there's kind of like two pieces to that. One is just I haven't before articulated that it is relevant in all these other places. And second is because one thing I find is that nobody wants it to apply to them. I don't want it to apply to me. I want to be able to go and just tinker around and build something and then have the world shower uh, adulation and money on me, but that's not how the world works. And so the concept here is enterprise, B2C, deep tech, and kind of any other angle, both pull, like somebody is trying to accomplish something but blocked, which makes space for a new product, and the like implications of pull, the methodology derived from that, which is sell one-on-one, work with customers one-on-one, ideally before you have a product to figure out what pull is. Both of those still apply in all these other domains. And so we're going to go through, I think, type of business by type of business.
Yeah. So if the listener has the thought in their head of, I really like Rob's, writing, I like the idea of pull, but it's for somebody else. Like this is kind of for you.
Yes.
We're going to jump into it. And if you think that there's something in here that Rob, or I, mostly Rob, I definitely misunderstand like your context, but Rob's the smart one. So if there's something in here that you think Rob is getting wrong, drop it in the comments. Like we'd love to hear like what the objections are that folks have.
Yeah,
Um,
or what about X specific situation, right? Like that's totally fine. We're not going to hit all the different situations here, because I got tired of writing at some point, and
Yeah.
so
You get
but
to
I've probably
hardware and
seen it.
we slow down quite a bit at that
I got to one
point.
paragraph on hardware. I was like, all right, no, yeah.
Um, I'm sorry, Rob. Yeah, you were saying like on a specific situation. There's we're gonna cover enterprise. We're gonna go, as you mentioned, B2C. We're gonna cover deep tech hardware, and then there might be some others that we touch along the way. So if those aren't in it, and you've got a question about how your situation applies, drop it
Yeah.
in there.
Sweet.
Well, why don't we? I'd actually let's start. Sorry to a listener that's been faithful. Let's start with just recapping what pull is. Um, it's the Rob. I'll just give a shot at
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah,
I feel like
let's
I'm
say,
taking the oral test right now.
yep.
So pull are the four requirements that if they are satisfied, the customer will rip the product out of your hands. And the four are there's a project on their to-do list. U is that it is urgent or unavoidable for some reason. Those two constitute the demand situation that the client is in. And then on the supply side is the L and the L, which is they are looking for options, and the options are lacking in some important way that your supply, your product is positioned to address. Anything you'd add there on pull?
Yeah, so this framework basically defines when somebody would be weird not to buy your product. And if you understand this framework, you realize that most people most of the time would be insane to buy your product, even if they have pain points, even if they have problems, even if you could provide ROI to them. So the pull framework is the way to define your ICP, what you're building. It basically is the most upstream thing in a startup. And you could think of it, there's a couple different ways to say what it is. It's defining an unmet need that will lead to a purchase right away.
Yeah, yeah. You write something that found very striking that I'd like you to go into for a second. You're right. The whole point of a startup is to find repeatable pull, which causes fast growth. Um, Pull, in other words, defines a buyer's unmet need, which pulls companies into existence and makes products relevant. I had never thought of the reason that a startup exists is to identify the pull and to create it. What's I don't know. Can you talk more about that? I find it very interesting.
Yeah, so pull, like the buyer's need, unmet need, pulls a product into existence. It it basically is like the buyer, if they're trying to accomplish something but blocked, and you offer them something that's kind of like it's even like a service, right? Or something like that. We can go through kind of like a couple examples. They're gonna say, cool, I need that right now. And they will pull it into existence, even if it doesn't exist yet. And they will give you feedback to make it better. And they will say, they will be demanding, they will need more because it is fitting a need that they have that exists on their to-do list where they are blocked, right? So we often think that a startup's job is to build a product and convince people to want it, which is totally misunderstanding the physics here. Startup's job is to find a need, to find pull, and that will bring the product into existence and bring the business into existence and basically shape those entities, the product and the thing. But like our job, we're often just focused on the wrong thing, the product, convincing, the messaging, all that kind of stuff, when we need to be focused on the need, on the pull.
Yeah. I don't know how I would have responded to what is the purpose of a startup prior to this, but it would have been much closer to um create products. Like it would have been I've my brain is just engineered, I think, for whatever reason, to be supply focused, to be product focused. Even if it's build a product and then find pull for the product, but that's also the wrong orientation. It's like understand the pull first, product is downstream, as you like to say, of that.
Yeah, you like the goal is for pull to do the heavy lifting because
Yeah.
you literally can't do the heavy.
Yeah.
You can't lift a market
And that's not just because I don't deadlift as much as you, Rob.
yet, not yet.
I really like your first example. We're going to get into enterprise, which is an area, having stalked you on LinkedIn, for a while. I see this one come up frequently where it's like, this is great when you're selling to SMBs. I totally get it. But when you're selling into Fortune 500, it like, no, like there's other physics that are at work here. What would you say about this one?
Yeah, so the actually super common story, and I actually work with VCs, like very close to a couple of VCs who are basically enterprise and cybersecurity, which are like that's the intersection of the place where everyone's like, okay, cool, yeah, this can't possibly apply there, and and their whole thing is, no, this especially applies here. And so they've seen this enough times, and I've seen this enough time in enterprise, and like kind of some of these domains that are places where you would think, okay, this can't possibly apply. But then I would like my argument, and I'll go through an example here. But my argument would be, what other physics would apply here? Like, how would it work? And I think I've basically just heard no other argument other that is any sort of intelligibility. Like the common example here, one of my friends, I'm going to anonymize it a little bit, but he had built an AI executive coach, which, like, I don't know, watched your Zoom calls and was like, hey, you are a little too much, right? Like
Yeah.
that would be mine.
What everybody wants to hear is like detailed computers telling you that you suck at managing people.
No, I mean, I think I would honestly probably, so I would like to have that kind of feedback, but it's not on my to-do list. Like it's the kind of supply I wouldn't not want. I wouldn't mind, and you could find pain points, you could find like whatever. And there's probably a business to be built there. But he was trying to sell it into HR departments, and they were like, everyone was like, oh wow, this is really cool. He's trying to sell it into executive coaching firm. Again, like, wow, super cool. Tried to sell it to individuals. Same thing. It was, nods and not revenue. And so that was going on for years. And then he just randomly got connected to a healthcare executive. And he was at the point where he was like, all right, we have 6 months of cash left. We have $0. And like, what the heck do we do here? And so he asked that person, like, what are you, like, basically, what would you pay me to solve for you? What would you pay me to take off of your plate? And the person was like, yeah, that's really interesting. What we've been struggling with is this. We basically need to understand what people are saying on social media about certain diseases. I'm not going to go into too much more detail, but that's essentially, we don't have a good way to do that. We're trying to do that, but we're blocked. We've paid consultants to do that before, and it's not great. So I don't know if there's anything possible there, but that's something I've been thinking about recently. We've kind of been trying to figure out and don't have a way to figure out. The founder's like, huh, interesting. Well, I don't do that, but maybe I could. I don't think he said that part live, but but he's like, oh yeah, I think we can help you with that. Let's meet again maybe tomorrow, and I can kind of walk you through how we would approach that, right? And he comes and shows an example, basically PDF report that doesn't exist yet, of like, here's what people are saying about this disease on social media, and basically, this is a rough shape of a report. Is this kind of what you're looking for? And the exec gave some feedback, was generally like, yeah, can you do that? Like automatically? Can you do that regularly for us? Could you maybe build a dashboard or something like that? And that's how the business started, right? And so it was executive trying to accomplish something but blocked, pull framework here, and sales before you have a product, which is actually quite frequent in enterprise. Very free. You can deliver it as services early on, especially in enterprise, because they know how to buy services. They are often willing to spend much more, and this executive bought fast. But at the same time, like after that call, when the exec was like, "Yeah, it seems to be a good fit," the founder was like, "Cool. How do I get a couple more intros to people like this, just to see if this is a common thing people are trying to accomplish but blocked?" It turns out it was, and he went from 0 to 250K revenue in couple months.
Yeah.
Again, enterprise, healthcare, should like everything that you will like learn is like, well, that couldn't possibly work there. And it's like it did. I've even actually I'll pause there. So questions, comments.
Yeah, I think this example is interesting for a number of reasons. One of which is um, his first approach was start with product, sell product.
Yes.
His second approach is discovering demand. And the way that he did it was through a very simple question, which was, what would you pay me to do? Basically, or some version of that. And so it's, you've written about this in the past, just how like the simplest, kind of like quote unquote dumbest questions, like you don't look smart when you go to a healthcare VP and are like, what would you pay me to do? But if you're like, but that's they get to talk actually about the thing that they want you to do for them, which is the root in that case of pull. And I think there's something in the end of this, which is not all demand is repeatable. What do I do with the repeatability piece? Like what this founder did was he took a conversation, confirmation of demand with probably a manually created report, and then I guess used outbound to validate that it was repeatable demand that was worth approaching. Or what would you say about that?
Yeah. So I think this is one of the common traps that even I like that's as if I as if I know anything, right? That I have fallen into, which is okay, you get one. It's like cool, let's go down heads down, build with them. And I have been burned by that enough times to just because you're going to over engineer for this specific customer when maybe it's just an N of one or and so what you want to do is you want to do outbound or kind of get intros or whatever, but get conversations with people who kind of look like that to see, hey, I was just talking to this other exec and they were trying to do this, blocked by this. Is that on your to-do list? And if not, what is?
And what would you? There are some differences between SMB and selling into enterprises. You write about this around. I guess it sounds like that when you advise founders who are an SMB land, it's more repeatable. It's less bespoke. Probably the contracts are a little bit smaller. The
Yes.
sales cycle is different. You might be selling into founders or to a very small team. Talk about enterprise, or like what's the difference? How should founders pull still applies, but how should founders think about pursuing pull or understanding it with enterprise?
Yeah, man, I think pull is actually more like a better fit, and the like one-to-one sales model and the do it manually first model fits enterprise even better than it fits SMB. Often in SMB, I was talking to a company where they're like, listen, our contracts are like $100 a month. How do we do that manually in a way that like we can be profitable or we can like make enough money to survive doing stuff, selling services first? And it's like, okay, I might have, but enterprise, it's like very, very clear that you can sell something that they perceive as a service for a lot more money. You just get a couple contracts up front and you increasingly productize over time. Now, the other piece here is that sometimes we think, okay, but it's because it's enterprise, because the contracts are big, we need to do a lot more like hand waving. And like we need to do a lot more selling on the future and on our vision. And and what I'll say is like try it and see what happens. And what you'll find is that when you do that, you will get nods and people won't buy because it's not because your vision isn't compelling. It's not because your arguments aren't persuasive. It's because it's so difficult to buy something in enterprise that the buyer, the champion, the person who's going to exert the effort internally to go through 47 demos in a procurement process
Yeah.
has to have something they are trying to accomplish that is so important to them that they will pull you through that process. they will help you do that. Otherwise, you're basically just assuming, hey, this person's just like sitting there eating Cheetos, and I show up and I paint such a compelling view of the world that they're going to drop everything they were not doing and like pull us through this process. And that's a fairy tale, which assumes that buyers are stupid or like don't do anything. And it's just not true.
Yeah. The having observed this recently with a sales process that we just completed with a large public university, which like falls it's like you are there, yeah, exactly, Rob. Rob just made the sign of the cross on me for whoever's listening. But yeah, it's like if the person is not highly motivated to work with you, they will not bring it to their boss, who's going to bring it to their boss, who is going to require legal vetting, who's going to have to work with a contracts department. The amount of work that has to be done by the champion, by the buyer on the customer side is astronomical. And so you really have to have something that is very closely aligned to what their project.
But that's the key there. In that case, when you sold that, this person wasn't just sitting around, again, like munching on goldfish,
Yeah,
waiting to be inspired. This
yeah,
person who wound up being the champion was trying to accomplish something before you showed up, blocked by their current options. You showed up, and they didn't say, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Let's throw everything else to the side and pursue that. They're like, holy cow, that's what we've been trying to do this whole time.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. Um, let's see. Are there maybe before let's get into consumer, but before that, actions, tactical things that you would recommend to founders who are selling into enterprise who might be thinking about applying Pool?
Yeah, so what I'd say is it depends on your stage. If you were early, I'm going to write another post on how to sell services first without apologizing for selling services. This is the main trap people fall into when they are trying to go enterprise, which is they pitch a product and apologize that it's a service, which is a great way to not sell anything. And so we'll go into that. But I would just say watch your sales calls and see that pull is there. And realize that if you can uncover pull from a champion and it's strong enough, all you have to do is fit their pull. And it could be that this person in this organization is a little different from this person in this other similar organization. They're at different levels. They're kind of in different, slightly different departments, slightly different job titles. There's some idiosyncrasies. And you might be like, oh my gosh, we don't really have repeatability. No, it's not identical, but it's still relatively repeatable. On the demand side, if you squint a little bit, it's pretty repeatable. On the supply side, it's identical. So I wouldn't worry too much about it being exactly identical case studies. In enterprise, you have a little bit more kind of wiggle room on the demand side, depending on who the person is.
That's super interesting. Hadn't thought about that. We've sold into universities, nonprofits, government agencies, and so it's thinking about it through that lens. It's like, if they're all trying to do something a little bit different. The pitch isn't 100% the same. It evolves a little bit as you're understanding the specific like enterprise or large corporation situation, or large
Repeatable, not
entity.
identical, I think is like the important concept there.
Let's get into consumer. Um, you write a little bit about my business, Coomer Media. What we also mentioned, Starbucks. In the past, you've talked and written about buying a car and what, But let's start with the excuse me, initial question of does pull apply to business to consumer businesses?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Does the pull framework apply where someone is trying to accomplish something but blocked and that causes them to buy something that fits in the way that their existing options don't? Like, yes, it does, right? This is a generalized framework for understanding why people buy things. Underneath it, there is a generalized framework for human action, like a generalized set of models to understand why we do anything at all. And so the framework itself applies. And I think the example that we were talking about before when we tried to record this last time and then it didn't, you'd mentioned that your podcasts, your media properties, perform better in Spanish than in English
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
terms of audience growth. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. So the context on Cumbre, we uh, followed sort of demand from parents into children's programs. And so the pull for hours are the project is basically, I'd say this is 80% of our audience. Um, Either I get in the car and I need to put on something that I don't hate as a parent and that I feel good about my children consuming, or I need my kids to calm down before they go to sleep. Like those are the two like projects that people are working on. You like the it's unavoidable because you get in the car every day to drive your kids to school, or your children go to sleep every night. It's on the supply side that why we do better. So the if we think about L&L, so they're looking for options and the options are lacking. That we basically like led. We went into Spanish first because we looked at Spanish and English and we saw a bunch in English and we saw almost nothing in Spanish. And so there was basically like even if they were looking, the options were lacking because audio for kids on demand did not exist. Basically as a category. There were like two others that were playing around but in a different way. And so that's we found we grow it's cheaper for us to reach families, not just because of like differences in economies, but because as soon as parents learn about our programs, they're like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. They write to us and say things like, I've been looking for your type of program and finally we found you. It's like the supply, they were so constrained that as soon as, we came in, they were, parents and they're sharing it. It's like but on English, there's already good options. Like the options are not as lacking. And so many of them already have established podcasts that they listen to. It's a harder market to get into for that reason. I don't know, Rob, is that
Yeah.
the
Yeah, no, so what that tells me though is that totally fits the framework, right? Even for a media business, even for right, like, and I think I've even like drafted posts on like some of the new media companies that have come out too. And what you find is that what they find is a group of people who are trying to like understand the world, but feel like the kind of ideological tilt of their existing options don't fit them. And they just have this pent up anger. And so that's kind of how new media organizations seem to come into existence, right? And so this applies in media, it applies in consumer products, and you can see it in the difference between English and Spanish, where in English there are good options, good enough options. The list of options on that they have available to them are not lacking significantly. Yours is still better
yeah,
than the
it's
other
yeah,
options out there, but
yeah,
they have options that fit well enough
yeah.
that it's not something they're actively applying pressure to.
Yeah. And so the what I'm doing with English right now is trying to understand where is there something that's lacking. And
Yes.
like if we're going to produce bilingual, which we have to do for other reasons, we need to understand where is their pull, like what other projects are they doing? Because it's not as simple and straightforward and maybe as big as I need audio for the car before bed, but there might be something around inspiration. Like there's actually like maybe a slightly different approach that parents are looking for. We just launched in English a couple months ago. But
Yeah.
do we want to hit?
Yeah,
You talk about
let's talk
Starbucks or cars?
one-on-one sale. Let's talk because
Okay.
people will be like, all right, fine, I'll grant you that the pull framework applies, but one-on-one sales and consumer, are you crazy? And it's like and I get it, right? Like one-on-one sales don't scale. You're not going to use a slide deck necessarily to sell a consumer service or whatever, right? It's just not a for $3 thing or $10 thing. Like that makes no sense. But actually, if you read back through a lot of the stories of big consumer products and companies that have emerged, what you see is a kind of a glossed over part of the story is often the founder doing one-on-one sales and customer support and stuff in the early days. And they're not doing it because it scales. They're doing it to figure out what works. And that's the key. One-on-one sales is it can scale in enterprise, right? It can you can figure out methods for it to scale in the mid-market SMB side. It won't scale necessarily in consumer, but it teaches you through blunt force interactions with potential customers, what are they really trying to accomplish and where are they blocked? So if you read the Starbucks story, look at how Howard Schultz um like evolved, unfolded the first Starbucks store from a, like a bow-tied barista Italian experience to what it is today, or to kind of what it was in its heyday. And what you'll see is him observing customers interacting with the store, with the experience, with the offerings, and getting blocked and trying to figure out what are they really trying to accomplish and how do we redesign the store to fit something that is perfect for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And on thinking about bigger ticket, actually before that, when I hear you talk about the, Howard Schultz, about Spanx, about, some of these other examples, it's like B2C goblin mode almost is how I think of it. It's like you're not doing a scalable thing. You are going to the customer. You are like observing in person. Like if you remove the pride of like my time is worth X because I'm the CEO of company or whatever, and you just go figure it out, sit there with them, see what they're trying to accomplish. There's probably a bunch of different ways that applies, but similarly, similar advice, different flavor to what you offer for goblin mode for B2B. Um, also, I think that I love your car. I've been thinking about your car sales approach. Like if the car dealership used a pull framework for understanding, like structuring how they interacted with customers, using like what's the project that they're trying to accomplish, why is it urgent? What are the options they're looking at? Why are they lacking? Like I think even you mentioned $3 to $10 a purchase, or like, low dollar purchases for consumers. It also applies B2C for much larger.
Yeah, totally. I think you can apply it to the individual sales process for something like a car, or you could apply it to the design of a car, of like, what kind of car do we think the market will pull out of our hands, right? And so you can apply it either stage, but like an example I give with cars is when I decided to buy our second car, I I was on a very tight timeline. And the reason I bought the car was not, I want a Honda CRV. I don't know that anybody has ever wanted a Honda CRV. We all just arrive at the dealership resigned to buying a Honda CRV. This podcast sponsored, by the way, by no, the
Not by Honda
no,
after that ringing endorsement of their car.
I have two, and I showed up both times. Like,
Yeah.
there's,
Here we go.
yeah, here we go. But the second time, right, my wife was coming off of maternity leave in like 3 weeks. And there was a chance that one of us was going to have to drive down to Boston, leaving the other one without a car and a baby at daycare, right? And so that forced me to buy a car at that point. And I had just resigned myself to a Honda CR-V. Now, the fun thing I like to say is, if like they basically could have done anything to me in the sales process, and I would have bought a Honda CR-V. They could have introduced a step in the sales process where they're like, okay, cool. And step 2 in our sales process is, here's a piece of sandpaper. You need to lick it. And it's like, and I'm like, all right, fine, right? I just need this damn thing. And then they're going to be looking at the metrics after that and saying, well, 100% of people who lick sandpaper buy a CRV. So therefore, right? And that just misunderstands the whole piece here. But there was something on my to-do list. I had I couldn't find a better option. Teleportation doesn't exist yet. There wasn't another good option, and so I wound up with that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get into a couple more. One is deep tech. Can you give maybe the TLDR on what is deep tech for those of us that, for example, produce children's podcasts?
Yeah. So deep tech is stuff that has a tech that takes a long time to develop and is usually kind of with some goal of making some step change in technology, and in theory with the eventual goal of commercialization. And so, right, when I go and there's like Harvard Grid, and there's like a couple of MIT things that they, that I go and help out with. And those are people who've kind of been in a lab for a while. And they're like postdocs. They've been doing research for like 10 years, and they've built this like new kind of way to think about exoskeletons or something crazy like that. And, um, and so like the thought is, okay, because we have to do some fundamental research here. I don't know if pull applies, which like makes sense, right? You're going to have to do some fundamental research. But wait a second. No. If you're doing research, if you're going to spend your life researching something in a lab with the goal of eventual commercialization, it is even more important to know who you aspire to unblock. It might not be, right, like research is a series of happy accidents sometimes where something random happens and like, oh, well, maybe it's that thing, maybe it's something
Yeah,
else. But if I'm going to be spending 3 years, 5 years heads down in a lab, I want a customer lined up.
yeah.
And I want to know exactly what they're trying to do and in what ways they are blocked.
Yeah. They, uh, we actually work quite a bit with universities because we communicate science for researchers. We help them with NSF grants, with DOE and some of these other like NIH. I My interpretation of like deep tech or like other types of research are there's two places that pull applies. One is with the granting institution that is funding the research, which is frequently looking for they have something specific that you should be thinking about what is their project, not what is the research that I want to do. And if you write a different type of grant, when like I've learned a lot working with there's a researcher at the University of Miami who's it's been super interesting watching how he thinks about it. But he doesn't use the words for pull, but that's how he thinks about approaching it. Like what is their project? What is behind this proposal or the RFP that they've submitted or they've put out? And then the other one is this is the reason why partnerships, either with the private sector, or there's another researcher we featured that with the Department of Navy, um, and it's basically like when this researcher in that example told the Navy, like, I think we can use this, like basically engineered synthetic protein to accomplish something for you. The Navy was like, if you can do that, that is super valuable. And that, like, there were other things that are going on with, in the Department of, at the time, Department of Defense that led to them pulling this, multi-year, massive, multi-millions of dollars of investment that they would need to make in order to fund this whole lab. And so I think pull very much applies. I'm sure there's other, that's why corporate partnerships are important for research as well, going into those applications.
Yeah. Well, let's separate three things here. One is just research, like research for the sake of research. That doesn't necessarily need to fit anyone's pull because the goal is just research, right? Like we're trying to move some needle on technology. It's like, okay, we're just doing some kind of fundamental research. That's totally fine. That's it. But the goal there is not commercialization. Now, sometimes you do that kind of just fundamental research with an idea of an application in the future of like, whoa, what could this do? But again, that's fundamental research, right? Then there's research, deep tech tied towards commercialization, where you want to have the customer, you want to know, have a rough sense, or no, you want to have a very clear sense of if you go the way that you think you're going to go, who's going to buy that? With the option, you run an option play of learning something interesting in the process of building the technology, where it has an emergent use case that you have to find pull for in a different place. And then the last piece is the funding side, right? Which is the grants. How are we going to fund this research? That's actually probably behaves, again, by pull, just like venture funding also applies the pull framework. When you're raising money from VCs, what are they trying to do, right? I think the best way to articulate what the project on their to-do list is, I am trying to not miss out on the next big thing. And so, right, like these are, yeah, I think separating those three, but zooming out still applies in deep tech.
Yeah. The second one I actually think is incredibly important. Like if you think about a group of folks that don't understand pull, actually all of us. However, people that are postdocs that have never, they've worked in research their entire lives. That's a group that you'll frequently see them trying to like, okay, we have this new technology. I can imagine it being applied in ways. If they could, they have frequently something incredibly valuable. And if they knew how to identify pull, identify the project, work with customers, like there's, massive businesses and incredible value to be unlocked there.
Oh yeah, they like that is. I loved like helping them because it is shooting fish in a barrel, right? Whenever when they figure it out, it is like, hey, I'm this fancy PhD from MIT working on this insane technology, wanted to like 100% response rate to their target customers, and then they have to have the conversations about like, kind of use case, does this fit what you're trying to do, and figure out what are they trying to do. But like, oh yeah, it's once you figure that out, these businesses can really take off.
Rob, we're going to run up against time, but hardware, what would you say quickly about hardware
Kickstarter.
for B2C hardware? Yeah, it's before you have hardware, you've already identified that there's pull for what you're doing.
Yeah. B2B operates the same. It's just one-to-one. I've seen a variety of it, and this intersects often with deep tech, where it's like, here's our thing. Is this like this is the concept of what we're working towards, which would enable you to accomplish this, where you're currently blocked from this. Are you trying to solve for that? And you can get pre-orders for that, and in like kind of very expensively paid pilots for that.
Yeah, I was on a call literally yesterday. They were talking about an adjacent product that they're trying to do that's related to what we would do on the media side, and they, without realizing it, basically talked me through their pull. They were like, the project is we need to scale. If we're going to do media, like we need to be able to scale our ability to deliver this. It's urgent because we're about to launch media campaigns. We've been looking for options, but they're looking for options in XYZ. We have a current provider. And we're thinking about DIY approaches at home, things that parents can do. Like they just walked through the
Yeah.
entire pull framework.
The crazy thing is like pull is hidden in plain sight. It is in plain sight. If you watch a sale, like whenever I watch a sales call, I am just like hitting my head against the wall repeatedly because the customer is giving the rough contours of the pull framework. And we've been taught so much nonsense that we're like, cool. Thanks for that. Not relevant. Now it's time for me to interrogate
Yeah.
you and then tell you what you want, right? Like, and it's like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, we're going to run up against time. Leave comments, folks, if there's things that you want Rob to take on. He's doing like an FAQ series. So bring your questions or your skepticism. Like we want to know that so that we can address it. Rob, anything you'd add before we go?
Nope.
All right, cool. We'll see everybody next week.